Parfait.
Okay, and we are live. And hi,
Wonderful.
everybody. I'm Mel Rosenberg, the host of the Children's Literature channel of the New Books Network. And I'm here with a wonderful, wonderful guest whom I've been dying to meet for many months now, Marie-Louise Gay. So, bienvenue, welcome to the interview. So delighted to have you.
Moi aussi, enchantée de vous rencontrer virtuellement. Alors, c'est un plaisir de faire ça. It's a
Okay,
pleasure.
et maintenant, we're going over to anglais.
Okay.
In the
Yes.
meantime, I'm very proud because I grew up in Canada, in Ottawa, and I should speak better French, but I don't. And sending you love from Israel, and the wonderful technologies of the world allow us to speak from Tel Aviv to Montreal, and wonderful that you're here. And Marie-Louise, you're celebrating a brand new book. I think you've done about 60. You are a celebrated illustrator and author, and you've won incredibly. I'm going to fix that. You won multiple awards, and you keep winning awards. And your new book, Walking Trees. Talk us through the Walking Trees.
Well, Walking Trees was a very special project for me. I can just show it, the cover to you in this bright green color. I usually, all my books come directly from my imagination. I build them up with notes that I have taken of different events, with things that I have observed in my notebooks. In this case, I read an article about this incredible art performance project, I guess we could say, in Holland. And it was these artists that decided that there should be a way to make people realize how the world needs a different landscape, how cities need a different landscape. In the case of Walking Trees, they decided that they would plant these trees in huge containers, and with volunteers all over the city, they would push these containers of trees into different areas of the cities that had no trees. And I thought that was so wonderful because I live in a city, Montreal, where in my neighborhood, there's trees everywhere. Actually, when there's storms, our streets are littered with branches.
Well, what neighborhood? Because I saw the beautiful view from your window.
Yes.
What neighborhood?
It's Outremont.
Outremont,
So
oui.
Outremont means on the other side of the mountain. We are very proud in Montreal that we have a mountain in the middle of our city, but it's quite small as a mountain. And I am on the other side compared to because Montreal is an island, which is something that people don't know. And it's really floating in the St. Lawrence River. So we get to the top of the mountain and you see the St. Lawrence River all around the island. And so in my neighborhood, there's a lot of trees, but there are other neighborhoods that are really neighborhoods that are just, cement and bricks and hardly any parks. And I thought it was incredible to think of that, because we are always asking the city to plant trees everywhere. But this idea of showing what it would be like if you had a little oasis, I don't know how to say that in the plural, but oasis.
Oases.
Oasis sounds good. Des oasis en français, it doesn't change. Of shade, of comfort, and of course, it helps the atmosphere and everything. And so, but I thought, what would be a wonderful idea is to see kids doing something like that. How to transform that experience so that a kid could imagine it. A kid could imagine doing it. So it's the story of Lily, who had never seen a forest before because she lives in a very gray cement block city. And her father brings her when she's young to see a forest, and she falls in love with the forest, one tree at a time. And then when her father asks her later on, what would she like for her birthday? She wants a tree. And he says, well, you can't, what are you going to do with a tree? You can't play with a tree. There's nothing to do. Oh, I'll put it on the balcony where there's light and air, and I'll water it every day, and I'll tell the tree some stories. And so she gets a tree for her birthday. And then decides that she'll name her tree George, which I think is a good name for a tree if you have to name one.
I think George is a good name for everybody and everything.
Exactly. And so she decides to show the city to George, and she puts him in a little cart and pulls him to the elevator, and then they go down on the street, and then we see her walking.
And the elevator is working.
And the elevator is working, and that's sort of, these are details. I'm glad you noticed that, because these are details that I put in my books that aren't important to the whole story, but they add something, little paths. They open windows to other types of living arrangements, financial, I don't know, how people live. And for example, she lives, in the text they say, she lives in a small, very small apartment with a very small balcony, and it's dark in there. So you sort of know, well, you know, she's not living in a big house. She lives in a place that is not that wonderful, but she has all this joy in her. And I find that really important. So when I say the elevator doesn't work, I'm saying, well, this is a building where, you know, there's small, dark apartments and elevators that don't work all the time, without making it the subject of the story. I really like to add things like that just give a certain color to a story, but it's not evident. It's not the story of a little girl that is lacking anything. Because
yeah, Marie-Louise, this is a gorgeous story, and for the viewing audience, everybody should run out and buy this book. It's gorgeous, and I'm going to ask you to read a little bit of it.
Yes.
And there's a fold out.
Yes.
Well,
would you like
show it, of course.
Would you like me to read the fold out? I'll show it to you, but I don't know if I have enough room because it folds out. But still, and also it. Let's see. Can you see? Here's part of it.
Yeah, we can see it.
And then I'm trying to get on the right direction. Well, let's see. Maybe I can do this better, like this, and hide myself. Now, do you see it?
Yes. It's so gorgeous.
That's so good. Yeah, it's so gorgeous. I know. I mean, I've read it a few times to children, and when I open this, they just like, oh, this is what happens. And then we start looking at all the details and the illustrations. And
it's incredible, really, when you are able to illustrate so beautifully along with your wonderful writing. This is a double gift that you have, and I want to go there in a minute. But please read.
Yes.
And because I have yes, I have so many questions to ask you. So I'm going to get off track. I know me.
Okay. Soon there were people bringing their own chairs to sit under the trees. Families spread out blankets and picnicked in the shade. Babies crawled, dogs slept, and musicians played their liveliest tunes in the small forest. Birds sang, butterflies fluttered, caterpillars inched their way up the trees. The air was cool and smelled of green leaves. The city had been transformed one tree at a time.
Gorgeous. So to make people like me jealous, I also read the jacket. So in the jacket, you describe how you did this gorgeous artwork. So you have acrylic and watercolors and pastel colors, and then pencils, and then white, and then all kinds of other things, and pieces of paper, as if to say that anybody could do this, but really nobody except you can.
Oh, yes, but you can do it in your way, you know?
I could.
I like explaining
that. Nobody would purchase it, but I could.
Yeah, I know. But I don't know. Maybe you'd be good at it. But this is the thing. What I find important, I always do that in every book I can't explain the whole technique, but I do everything by hand, of course. So the collage, the pencil, the watercolor, all this is on one page, and I've done this all by hand. But what I want to do is encourage, especially teachers that read these books to children or librarians, and then encourage them to try to do this, to copy what I've done with collage, with pencil, with watercolor. So this is sort of like a note, especially for them. This is the way, it's really, I did really do it with my hands, and
It's
that you
incredible.
can, yeah,
Before we talk about your life, because we're going to talk about your life, I'm going to say that you have been translated into a zillion languages, including Hebrew.
yes,
Stella has appeared in several books in Ivri here in Israel. So do you have those?
yes,
Yes. So
there
this
she
is
is.
in Hebrew is Zahavit Nesichat Hayam,
Okay,
which
thank you for telling me. I've always wondered
yeah,
what is it and what does that
it,
mean?
well, Zahavit comes from Zahav, which is gold.
Oh,
So Zahavit would be like a Goldie, would be like Goldie, the princess of the sea.
oh, that's nice. So,
Yes,
so in English, it's Stella, huh?
yes. Hmm.
Tissa. And of course, being a Hebrew book, it opens in a different way for me. And it's interesting because every artist has a way of drawing, a signature of the way of drawing. And so for me, these drawings are backwards in a way for me, because I always draw from here to there. I always bring the reader, but it actually is doing that. But since I'm not reading it, of course, I can't read, unfortunately, can't read Hebrew, but I
Hmm.
know the text pretty well.
So the book
But
flows, yeah, books that are in Hebrew and Arabic flow in the other direction.
I
And
know
it must be a great experience for you to see the book
it is, it
going
really,
going from there to here instead of from here
yeah.
to there.
But as you understand that my drawing is in the other way.
Yes, of
So,
course.
but since I'm not reading this, I don't get that flow. So I hope all the children did get that flow. Of course
Of
they did.
course, because this is how they read books.
I know. And this,
So
it,
exactly la même chose, but backwards.
I know, I understand, but it's just for me as an artist, I'm going, oh,
Yeah.
yeah. And this, what they did, can you see the little shining stars here? This
Hmm.
was added on for the Hebrew edition. It's not
Wow.
on the English or French or any other, and it's little starfish and leaves, but done in silver. It's so pretty. And the other one, this one was done in blue, for example.
Hmm.
Yeah, this
This is also Goldie Zahavit Umamlechet Hashamayim, which is Goldie and the kingdom of the sky, of the heavens.
the kingdom. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. So in English, it's the princess of the sky.
Yeah.
That's the title. And then of course there's this other one here. I got three. I
Yes.
found the third one.
Wow. So
Isn't
this
that
is
cool?
yes, and this is also Goldie Zahavit Nesichat HaChoresh, which is Zahavit, the princess of the forest. But Choresh is not a big forest; it's a small forest in Hebrew.
Yeah.
It's not like the Amazon.
No, 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 I don't want it to be. This has to be familiar for a lot of kids.
Sure.
Of course, the kids of the Amazon will say, what's that little
So,
forest?
so you are you're going to correct me with my French and my other mistakes, but you are very world famous for Stella and Sam. They appear in television programs, and you've won umpteen prizes and like how many dozens of books. And I'm going to tell you in a minute why I'm crazy about these two characters. But why did you pick another girl instead of Stella for the for your new Walking Trees book?
Because it's a completely different story. It has
Oh.
nothing to do with Stella. Stella is a series in itself.
Mhm.
Um, at a certain point, I think an artist has to be always refreshed by their ideas.
Yes, I agree. But you know, if it were you know Stella something,
Yeah,
Stella in the city, then you'd already have an advantage because people know this as you know a brand.
yes, but
But what you're saying is that the hero of the story is not Stella. It's not true to
no, it's not at
character.
all. No,
So yeah,
it's
but that's my next question.
yeah,
Did you even for a second think about writing this story from the voices of Stella and Sam?
no, not
Not
one second.
pas du tout.
No, but you do when for me ideas are emerge into my mind, and this character comes. I develop the character as I'm writing. So Stella and Sam is really the whole series a relationship between siblings, where one sibling is slightly older, has more knowledge, and the other one is starting to learn. And all the books are in dialogues, and they're all about discovering the world from the perspective of a child. So that is really the whole series in a nutshell. That she has all the knowledge. Sometimes her knowledge, Stella's knowledge, is pretty humorous and not exactly what a parent would answer. When Sam asks, where do starfish come
Yeah,
from?
oh, that's my favorite. You're reading my mind. Where do starfish? So she says they come from the sky.
They come
And
from the
then
sky.
and then he asks her, well, how do they live in the sea?
Yeah, exactly.
They learn to swim.
They learned to swim. So she says they fell from the sky, shooting stars that fell
Yeah,
into the
yeah,
water. And then he says, how did they manage in the water? And she says they learned to swim.
yeah.
Behind that is the fear that Sam has, the tiny Sam going into the ocean. The whole book until the last page, he does not want to go. He gives excuses. Not right now. No, I don't think so. And she's saying, come on in, come on in. So this is part of showing his fear. Because he questions this. If the stars went into the water, didn't they drown? And she says, no, they learn to swim, which is not saying, oh, Sam, you have to learn to swim. I don't want to be evident like that. I want it to come from somewhere else. And the children from 2 years up recognize Sam's fear, because it sort of comes in a way that goes into their heart directly. They recognize it. And that's why I write books, so children recognize themselves in the books. Now, when you ask me about walking trees, why it wasn't it Stella? Well, then you could ask about hopscotch, which has a little girl called Ophelia. This is very close to my childhood, this book, well, certain elements of my childhood. And it's not at all the same thing. I don't want to put a sibling in there. There's no way there's a link with Stella.
Okay,
So
but I'm just thinking because sometimes publishers enjoy having more books in a series rather
yes,
than, and of course the author illustrator wants to develop a whole new character
yeah.
that's suitable. And there's always this pull. And
Yeah.
I'm glad that you stick up for your new characters.
Well, I think it's really
Hey,
important.
a word about hopscotch before we go into your childhood.
Yeah. What about hopscotch? You want me to read?
No,
Is that what?
you know what? Let's do this, Marie-Louise. Let's talk about your childhood,
Okay.
and then talk a little bit about the similarity with hopscotch.
Okay. Great. So, shall I tell you about my childhood?
Yeah, because I think that I read about you, but I think that you're much better equipped than I am.
Okay. Well, I had a very nomadic childhood. We moved, I think before I was 12, we moved 10 times. And that's moving from different parts of Quebec to Montreal, to back to Sherbrooke, Ottawa, we didn't live there, Quebec we did. And then we moved to Ontario when I was 5 years old, and I spoke only French. This is the big part of hopscotch, of
Yeah.
course. So I arrived at 5 years old at my kindergarten, and I was the only one speaking French. So this is when I started the English part of my life, because after that we moved to British Columbia, Vancouver, West Vancouver actually,
Why were you all over the place? What
because of
was
my
the?
father's job. He was a sales rep, and they
Mhm.
just brought him everywhere, and the family followed, and that was it. We were uprooted a lot of times because my father changed jobs very often. That was the way
No,
his career.
I saw that a little bit in your tree story, I must say.
Yeah, also, yeah, you could say that. Exactly.
Okay,
There's a
and so this must have had so. If I were to ask you what is the most traumatic of these nomadic years, maybe you would say the kindergarten in Ontario. Where in Ontario?
Oakville,
Oakville,
Ontario.
near
Small.
Toronto. Yeah.
Actually, I passed through it when I was on a tour, and I thought, oh my God, I don't remember it that way. It was so small, so big, small then and big now. Yeah. So I guess traumatic. I don't think it was traumatic, but it was it was a difficult childhood because of that. Because actually we would move someplace, but then my father would disappear because he would be working, selling all over the place and that. So it was, a childhood, a lonely childhood in the sense that you change schools all the time, you change friends all the time.
Did you have a Sam?
Yeah, I had it wasn't a Sam, it was a sister. Yeah. Yeah, a younger sister. So we did, I mean, we did play all sorts of very imaginative games and everything, but you just have a sense. I think children are really like being in the same place all the time with the same habits and everything. I'm not talking about traveling and discovering. I'm talking about, you want to be in the same house, the same bed, same school, same friends. And when you don't have that, until you're 12, 13, when we came back to Montreal, it was not always easy.
So I read somewhere that you failed grade 3 art class.
Yeah, I'd like to see that teacher today. I don't know if she would recognize me, but I
Well,
failed.
why would she fail you?
Yeah, well, first of all, why would you fail any kid in our class unless they're doing nothing?
Yeah.
Uh, that teacher thought that I wasn't following instructions, and the instructions were usually coloring in
In the lines.
a picture that was done by the teacher, or I don't know, and I just didn't.
There's a story there, you know.
I know there is. And I think I've touched on it a lot in my books. Different kids in Fern and Horn, for example. I don't know if I have it here. In Fern and Horn, the brother, they're again sister and brother, but they're not Stella and Sam. And he just can't draw. And he looks at his sister, so then he gets enraged and does all sorts of crazy things. Well, I don't think I really can draw, how could I say, in a very realistic way. So I have fun with what I do. So if the teacher asked us to draw a vase with flowers, I mean, mine would be completely crooked, then huge flowers that would look like faces almost. And she would say, "But that's not what I asked." And then I got failed.
So I mean,
Love,
but I mean, this paradigm that, because I grew up, I'm a little older than you. I could be your Sam, but I'm a little older than you are. And we grew up in the same school systems in Canada
yeah.
that prohibited you from being left-handed, which I was,
Oh
and
my God.
you had to draw in the lines, and there were so many things you had to do.
Yeah.
And I think that, well, I'm going to say something trite. I mean, I love your rebellion in Stella and Sam, and we're going to go back to that because I think this is one of the most endearing qualities of your writing, is that you like thumb your nose at all of
Yeah.
these higher instances.
Yeah, but
So
what did to me though, to have to go like to be failed in art in third grade and all that, is that I stopped completely. I did not draw a line after that, and that went on until I was 16 years old. I just didn't have any interest. I would never do anything. But I mean, if I'm jumping too fast to 16, but I think we
no,
maybe
jump to 16.
that's when in my life things were going even not worse, let's say, where my parents were divorcing at a time where parents don't divorce. And I was going to school, and my notes were just on a downhill slide. And to sort of compensate for that, I started drawing cartoon drawings everywhere on any piece of paper, on a table.
On the pages of the textbook.
Yes, exactly, on pages of school books.
See, I see this so vividly.
Yeah, well, it was vivid.
No, I'm trying to imagine what you would draw today on. I take a textbook. You know, the textbook we studied in grade 5, Pirates and Pathfinders. They later burned those books. I mean, they were terrible books, but we had to learn them off by heart. Well, they didn't burn them, but I don't know what the word is.
Put them
They
off the
stopped
shelf.
teaching with them. Yeah.
Yeah.
But we had to learn them. We had to learn off by heart, and we had to copy them. And I just had this
Well,
vision of you sitting making all kinds of cartoon illustrations Oh,
Well,
I'm so jealous of your skill. Okay, and then what happened?
well, that's it. So I was doodling everywhere. Of course, at school they would tell me not to do that. But my mother, at that time I was living with my mother, who came from a family where nobody ever knew anything about art. We don't. It wasn't like now. My kid's good in art. Okay, I'm going to go on the computer and on the internet and find the best school, art school. You know, there wasn't that. You know, you sort of asked around. And I ended up, my mother said, yeah, I mean, you can't go on like that. Your notes are so bad. You're not interested. Let's find an art school, which I have to thank her for that. So I went, she found a school, which was a graphic art school. It wasn't at all a cartoon or illustration, anything that interested me. It was technology, a technical school in graphic design. But I just took to it like a duck to water for 1 year. And then I got bored because I wanted to draw. There I was learning perspective and comment on dit ça, lettering, no, there's a word for that. How to draw letters and typography and all these things, which funnily enough have become very important in my life because most of my books, I designed them. I have the art director of my publishing house, Michael Solomon, is incredibly good, but I have a lot of ideas because I understand what a book is about. Where do you put the text on the pages? So I see every time I do a book, I see the whole book.
You're a one-person show.
Almost.
Okay, so and then you went to study in the States, but you came back to Canada.
Yeah, well, I studied also in Canada at the Museum of Fine Arts School, where there I finally got, all sorts of different classes in art, photography, animation, which later on served me well too. And then I went to study, as you say, in the States, in San Francisco, to a school it was an illustration school. But I arrived there and I already had published a couple of illustrations in magazines and all that. So I just said, I don't really want notes. I don't need notes. So I'm just going to take this class and this class and this class. And he said, but you can't do that. You have to start with the first level. And I said, but I don't need the first level. I would just like to take this and this and this. And they said, yes, but you won't get notes on that. And I said, okay, that's fine. I don't care. I don't need a diploma to do what I do. So that's what I did. So I was able to choose a drawing, situation drawing, even classes like learning how to draw hands and heads, I mean, I was all cartoony and everything. So it was finally at the age, I don't know, 26 or 27, I was my first basic art drawings. So it was
Wow.
interesting. Yeah.
And how did you okay, so you became interested in children's writing. How did you become an author and an illustrator
Illustrator. I would say for the
of picture books?
Yes, but at first what I was doing mostly was I was doing editorial illustration, no writing at all,
Yeah.
editorial illustration for magazines. And I was approached by a publisher in Montreal who asked me if I would illustrate his text. He was the publisher and he had written some text, really crazy. When I think of that, it was sort of like that the yellow submarine, the type of drawings that I was doing at that time. And he wrote like yellow submarine would be written, really weird. We're talking, in the 70s. And I did 3 books with him.
Mhm.
And then I was thinking that my illustrations for me were talking to children. The text, I had the impression, was not talking the way I would like to talk and to tell stories to children. So I decided to try my hand at writing. I couldn't lose, So at that time, I was also art director of that publishing house. So I had that job. And I did 1 book, 2 books, and then I was just conquered by the richness of being able to write a story and illustrate it. So you're actually you're telling stories in 2 languages to kids. You're telling the story in the written language. So my books are usually for kids who don't know how to read. Some of them are for kids who know how to read, but mostly the picture books are for kids who don't know how to read. So they're read too by an adult or an older sibling. But meanwhile, those kids are reading my illustration without any help. They're looking at my illustration, decoding things that they know and they don't know. But it's sort of like very empowering for a child to be able to look at an illustration and know that they're understanding the story through that, and then listening as someone is telling and checking out details, but then seeing in my illustrations, I have the pleasure of hiding things in the drawings so that children will sort of look at that and say, but that's not in the story. That little rabbit in the corner that's knitting a scarf, that's not in the story, but it's there for them. It's like giving them, in French, we say un clin d'oeil, winking at them. Look for you. So
And your stories are so much like that. Before I talk about what you do so well is thumbing your nose at nonfiction,
Yeah.
so-called nonfiction.
Yeah.
A few words about hopscotch. Now we talked about your youth.
Yes. Well, hopscotch, how can I say this? After doing Stella and Sam, there's a link with Stella and Sam. People would ask me all the time, Stella is you, huh? This is your childhood. And I would say, well, in a way, maybe there's part of me, my personality, but it's also the story of I have two boys. So my two young boys, even if they're boys and not a boy and a girl, some of the dialogues come from their conversations. Some of what's in Stella and Sam is from my observation when I've done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of school readings and library readings and seeing children react and how they see the world, So Stella and Sam is not the story of my childhood, but a story of many childhoods. I would say many observations, because it takes me a long time to write, huh? So I do a lot of observations. Hopscotch then came as an answer to that question. What is Stella you? Is that the type of childhood you had? Now, I sort of told you a bit already that, I had a childhood that wasn't easy, that we moved around a lot. And Stella and Sam are just like in a perfect world. There's two siblings, no parents. Did you notice? No parents with Stella and Sam, which was a very big problem when we went to animate the animated series, because they wanted to put parents in my book. And I just stood there and said, there's no way. This is their world. This is the way they see the world. Parents are a bit like, like in Charlie Brown, like, the parents, you hear them talking, you don't ever see them. When children get into their world, the adults don't exist anymore. And I think for adults, that is a bit humbling, because they think they are so important for their children. But their children, they are important, of course, but children together, they form a gang. So in this book, I started telling more of my story, but it is a fictionalized version of my childhood, because there are things that I've turned around, because there are things I don't want to say that would be sad or difficult, but I want it to be there underneath. So there's many layers. So for example, I will.
You're reading my mind, because I was going to ask you to read a few
Yes.
lines and show a double spread.
Yeah. So can you see? Wait, I never know which way. Aha, this is the way you go. So
Mhm.
there you see that little girl in the window, and you see Jackson the dog there. From my bedroom window, I see into the neighbor's garden, where a small white dog is tied to the clothesline. His name is Jackson. All day long, he runs back and forth, right to left, left to right. Sometimes he stops and looks up at me. Does he want to tell me something? I wave to him, but Jackson starts running again, right to left, left to right. I dream of helping Jackson escape from his prison. All I need is a long ladder and a mask. There she is. And then I will snuggle him up to my bedroom. He can sleep in my bed. We will play games and share stories and secrets. Jackson and I will become best friends. And this is the last one I will read. But one morning, the garden is empty. The rope is dangling in the wind. Jackson has disappeared as if by magic. How did he escape? Where did he go? So we see just a little collar hanging from the clothesline. So this is a transformation of something that happened in my childhood, which is actually that dog was my dog. And that's what my parents would do, is tie him to the clothesline, and that's what he would do all day. And we moved, and the dog was left behind. And I was always hoping I would find it. My parents wouldn't, I don't know, can't remember because I was really pretty young then, 4 maybe. But the dog didn't exist anymore. And this was what happens to her. This dog that she wants to save and put into her room disappears one day, and there is no happy reunion at the end of the book. She is learning how to cope with life, with, thinking, what would Jackson do? He would probably protect me in this situation. He would probably run with me or whatever. So she creates an imaginary Jackson without knowing where he has gone. So, but you see how I transformed this so that it wouldn't be my dog. It would be a dog in another, you just transposing. Yeah, a dog. So that's
Incredible.
one part of it.
So you are, of course, completely bilingual, but French is your mother tongue.
Yes.
Is this a big advantage for you to be able to write in English and at the same time hear how it would sound en français? Maybe look for another. Let's say you have 2 ping pong games going on at the same time,
Yes.
Marie-Louise. You
Yes,
have the
and
ping pong of what to say and what to draw, and then anglais français.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And I'm glad you underlined this, because it is really I wouldn't say I translate my text, and I don't always write in English first. I write sometimes in French first. And then what I say is I adapt the text. French is a language that is so mellifluous. I mean, it takes like 15 words to say one thing, and in English, I can say it in 2 words. So it's a completely different brain arrangement, French to English. Now, I like nice short sentences. So when I write in English, that's what they are. In French, I have to take a deep breath and say, okay, you're going to have to put more words in there so that all the poetic side comes out.
Do you write in the Canadian French or a French French?
I write in international French. It's
No, but
not,
okay. Do people in France
oh yeah,
enjoy your books?
oh yeah, there's
La
no,
même chose.
oh, we see la même chose. I mean, I do not want to go to write in a patois or a joual.
Mhm.
But that's just my opinion. I just like writing in classic international French. It's not French from France. I never would use these cute little expressions that they use in France. I use
So you use the international like flat French that everybody can understand.
and understand. And yeah, really, I really do.
And
So,
one second. And your books sell better in English or in French?
good question. In English, I would say, first of all, there's more people. In Canada, there's more English people than French. So they sell in Quebec. Now, I have one French publisher. I had this put in my contract that I wanted always my books, because I go with an English publisher. All my books should be, sold to
Well,
this publisher.
let's mention Groundwood.
Yes, Groundwood Books is my publisher, exactly. And when I started with them, I signed a contract saying that they would ensure that my books are always printed in French. They would have to sell the rights. They have the rights. They sell the rights. We mostly had luck in Quebec, and so some of the Quebecois publishers would sell them. My Quebecois publisher is Héritage. They would sell them to France. But I would say English as an honest answer. I think in English, but then they've sold a lot in many other languages too. So
So,
that's pretty.
here's the thing. I'm also, I grew up in Canada. I live in Israel, and I'm trying to break into North America as a writer.
Yeah,
It's very difficult. You are very, very famous in Canada. And actually, I was the lady who suggested I interviewed you is Louise Leroux, who's a French Canadian, but living in New York, heading the children's library there in Manhattan.
Yeah.
So it's all very exciting, but you see yourself basically as a very Canadian author.
Yes.
But
I,
here's the thing. For
yeah.
me, a lot of people are going to be angry with me, but you write you write much better than a lot of American authors.
Oh, well,
You think that there's a some kind of, I don't know, small hill like in Outremont that you have to maneuver, climb in order to make the big time in America? Why is it that you're more famous in Canada? Is this a Canadian sentiment? Are your books somehow Canadian? Explain this to me. I left Canada over 50 years ago. I don't understand.
yeah. 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 So you left Canada for Israel,
Yeah.
50 years.
Well, I
Oh, wow.
didn't know. I mean, I came for a year to work on a kibbutz, but and I loved it and stayed. But
Yeah.
this program is about you.
Yeah. No, I know.
I'm interested
It's a little question.
in this, yeah, in Canadianism.
Yeah.
I,
I
ex-
think, I think I just decided I started off when I started writing books for children, long time ago, if I've done 60 to 70, um, long time ago, Canadian publishing was really exploding. Before that, not before me, but before that time, um, in Canada, the books that we read, most of them came from elsewhere. Either in Quebec, it would be from France, and in the rest of Canada, it would be from Great Britain or from the United States. But then someone had the bright idea, or a few people at the same time said, well, we should be doing our own books. We should have a publishing industry, which just exploded. It was just fantastic. It was very exciting. And I arrived at that time. So I didn't.
when was this? Because some people would
Okay.
argue that Robert Munsch, he brought this whole.
No, I didn't bring it. He arrived at the same time as me. He
Ah,
started
so
writing.
you brought it together.
No, a lot of people did, but I mean, I wasn't responsible for the publishing. I was just
No,
responsible.
I'm saying that there's a couple of Canadian authors
Yeah, they all date from.
that are known worldwide.
Yeah. And this is when we all started, when Canadian publishing, as I say, exploded, and that there was the Canada Council. As you know, the Canada Council was really very important in making Canadian literature well known. Because if you don't know it, if you don't know that the people that live in your country are publishing, so I remember when the first book I wrote, then I was invited into all sorts of places. I've been everywhere in Canada. You name a place, I've been there to talk about my books, read my
And
books, and everything.
you've won every Canadian medal, the Governor General's Award.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
But that's okay. So but now I'm going to ask the difficult question. Do you sometimes look in the mirror and say, I could have been better known in the States?
Well, this is exactly, I was going to answer that question even before you asked it, was that I was working in Canada, everything was going well. But of course, I wanted to work in the States because you knew that, if you could work in the States, you probably would make much more money and be well known and everything. But I felt I was really well known in Canada. It's not a problem for me. I did work for different publishers like Candlewick Press, but I was an illustrator. I didn't write the stories. I did a series called Houndsley and Katina with James Howe. James Howe, who wrote Banicula, the Vampire Rabbit, and so many books. And that was great. I did that. But I think to have continued in the United States, I would need to get an agent and just get serious about that. And I never needed an agent because I was in demand in Canada. So when you get to the States, it's bigger and you have to have someone to negotiate for you.
Yeah.
And I guess I just thought, well, if they want me, they'll see my books, especially when Stella and Sam came out and it became an animated series and all that. I thought, well, if they want to, but I've never stopped working. I've never had a time when I'm not working on a book. So I guess it was comfortable, and I feel I did well, during my career. As you say, I won awards. I made money.
No, listen, I think that you're terrific. I think it's wonderful. I just, I'm just thinking out loud together with you. But
Yes.
but
But I understand your question very well, because I do sometimes think, whoa, if I was, if I wrote books for example, either Candlewick or any other, I would be included in those prizes. I would be, and I would,
Exactement. I just published my first book.
yes,
Here, I did other things most of my life. I should have been writing, but that's another story. My book just came out here in Israel. It's doing really well, but I'm dreaming of having the English translation in North America. So we always have this thought, Um, but we're coming towards the end of our wonderful interview, and I think we're going to have another one, the next book that comes out. When will that be?
I don't know.
Okay,
I'm,
well, you'll let
I
me
have a
know.
project that's sort of, that's in the iron, no, on the iron. How do you say that? The iron is hot. I don't know.
It's in the works.
Yeah.
It's in the
Anyway,
works.
it's in the works. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
no,
I don't.
look, I left Israel when I was 17, and I speak Hebrew and American English, and I don't speak either of them very well. Okay,
Yes, you
but
do.
this is about you, Marie-Louise. This is about you. I want
Yes,
to
yes, you
concentrate
do.
on you.
So,
We have
so I
5 more minutes.
So I have some projects in the works. I always work on one or two projects at different, sometimes I'm doing the drawing or that.
Mhm.
And I don't wait for, I don't think about a publisher until I'm really at the end of a book. So I just, do my book. I do what I want to do. This is where I am now, is that I just, I want to do a book about something that is important to me. I am not going to waste another year of my life writing and illustrating a book. It's about that, at least that much time, with, all the thinking and, you
Sure.
know, pondering and sketching and writing over and over again. So I'm not going to waste a year of my life doing something I don't want to do. I don't want to be commissioned to do anything. So it's just like, and I wait for the ideas to come. And I usually don't wait very long, but I really don't. I have ideas all the time, but then it's to make it into a book is not always the same. So that's so.
Do you ever dummy up a story and then say, no, it's not going to work?
Yes, unfortunately. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, but I don't throw it away. I always
No.
put it away in a drawer.
Of
And then,
course.
so then one day,
Yeah.
for example, I took out this book, Caramba.
Yeah.
Uh, I don't know if you know this book. It
No.
has not been published in Hebrew, but it's a book about a cat who, unlike the rest of the cat population of where he lives, he doesn't know how to fly. He's the only one who doesn't know how to fly. So it's a book about that. This is a book that I wrote, that I tried writing for 5 years, because the first idea I had was to do a very cute book about my youngest son, who had this incredible relationship with his cat. It was like his brother. And I wanted to do a book about that. It was very cute. I'm telling you, the cutest book.
Marie-Louise, show one spread, and then I have my important, for me, last question to ask you.
Yeah.
Because if we talk about all your books, and I'd love to, then I'm going to book you for a whole year.
There you go.
You won't get any writing done.
Here's a scene of when all the cats leap off the cliff and they're flying, and you can hardly see him, but he's just behind his mother's white apron. And his friend says, "Don't you want to fly? Don't you want to swoop?" And he says, "No, I don't." And so look at the colors on this. Yeah. So this book was chosen by the Canadian Children's Book Center and the TD Grade 1 book giveaway. They printed books for every child in first grade in Canada, English or
It's incroyable, and we're not going to tell anybody, including me, whether the cat flies in the end, but you certainly do. But before I say au revoir,
French.
um, the one question that's bugging me
Yes.
is, how do you get away with it? There's so many authors who say it's so important to teach nonfiction to children and the way things are. And in your Stella books, she's like a wandering a spreader of false information. get away with that? I love it. I must say, I love it. But how do you
Yeah.
get away with it?
How did I get it? I think I got away with it because um, people who read the book recognize what Stella is doing. There's no parents in the book. Imagine Stella and Sam with parents, and then Sam would say, "Where do starfish come from?" Well, the mother or the father would get out a dictionary, or more now, would get out his phone that he had in his bathing suit, and would look up where starfish
In
come from.
Wikipedia, in Wikipedia.
Wikipedia. And but Stella doesn't have that, doesn't want to have that,
She,
has an
does,
imagination.
she doesn't need it.
She doesn't need it. So she invents stories. Listen to kids talking. I see them in my alleyway. If you can see from my window here, I'm looking into the alleyway. Kids are playing, they're inventing. You're going to be the toi, t'es un dragon, moi je suis un éléphant, puis toi tu vas faire ci. You are this, I am that, and we're going to do this together. And they're inventing. They're inventing. And where did you get it?
Children create their own reality.
Of course. And that
And this is mirrored in your writing.
yes. For
and
me,
so
the way I want to write is from the perspective of a child. So that's what I've just finished teaching a children's literature class, 8 weeks. And that's my whole goal, was not to teach them how to spell or have this type of voice or that. Yes, but I wanted them to have one voice. I wanted them to have one perspective. How would a child view what we're talking about here? This subject or that subject? And that to me.
So did you preserve your 5-year-old self all these years?
I think probably she is hidden somewhere in there. And
I don't think, I don't think she hides very well, Marie-Louise.
I know. I try to keep her down.
She keeps surfacing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Listen, we've been talking for almost an hour.
I can't believe it. It went so fast.
I'm going to thank Louise Leroux again for sort of introducing us, and
Yes.
I'm so happy that I managed to track you down and persuade you to be my guest. People run out and buy Marie-Louise Gay's books. I'm not sure you can buy all 60 of them, but certainly buy a few, and including, of course, her recent book, which we're celebrating, which launched in March with Groundwood, and it is called The Walking Trees.
Yes, and if you're in Holland, it's going to come out there. Okay. And if you're in Brazil, it's going to come out there. So
okay, and maybe here in Israel.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, trees can walk here also. If we wish it, it will come true.
I sure hope so for you. The trees will walk in Israel.
Yeah, we need a lot of miracles these days.
I think we do.
So you are a walking miracle. And I hope that someday I'm able to meet you. And I'm just going to say to everybody before I forget that my name is Mel Rosenberg, and I'm the host of the Children's Literature Channel of the New Books Network. And I've been here with the wonderful, celebrated international and Canadian, English and French, author and illustrator, Marie-Louise Gay. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mel. It was a wonderful interview.
Bye-bye. God bless.
God bless.